Hey everyone. Today we're going to continue more with the law of sines and the law of cosines. Today we're going to work with them together. The last couple of weeks we worked with the law of sines independently and the law of cosines independently. But today we're going to talk about when to use which one. So, for each situation, you're going to use a different one first. And in order to use either the law of sines or the law of cosines, which I have written out here, each equation has four unknowns. There's two angles and two sides here, three sides and one angle here. So there's four unknowns in each of them. So you need to know at least three pieces of information. And the only type of setup where you know three pieces and you can't solve the triangle is if there's three angles, because none of these equations have three angles. The equations either have two sides and two angles, or three sides and one angle. So nothing works with all three angles. So if you have three angles, you can't solve. So you can't solve the triangle if all you know is three angles. But if you have three sides, you can solve. So let's try an example with three sides. If we have three sides, we can't have three angles, but we can have three sides. Let's say we had triangle ABC, where the sides were 5, 7, and 9. So we have all three sides, and if we look at our laws, well, if it's law of sines, we would know sides A and B, but we wouldn't know either angle A or angle B. We would know sides B and C or A and C, but we wouldn't know any of the angles, so we can't use the law of sines. So anytime there are three sides, you have to use the law of cosines. So three sides means law of cosines. So anytime there are three sides, you have to use the law of cosines. Here is my hint to you. If you have three sides, find the biggest angle first. So find the biggest angle first. And the biggest angle is always opposite the largest side. Largest side is 9. So it's this one. So we're looking for angle B first. So you would use the law of cosines to find angle B. And when you look at the law of cosines, the one with angle B is this middle one right there. The side opposite angle B is by itself. And then the sides that include angle B are together over here. So it will be B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times cosine of B. So you would use the law of cosines. All right, so anytime you have all three sides, you use the law of cosines and try and find your biggest angle first. So I'm not going to go through and solve it. These are just arbitrary ones. There are other videos going through how to actually solve it. I mean, you would just isolate the cosine of B and then take the cosine inverse of both sides. And then you would find the rest of the values. But this is just how you get started. So that's when you have three sides. So when there's three sides, when you know all three sides, use the law of cosines. What if you only know two of the sides and one angle? Well, there's two cases for this. There's two cases. The angle is between the two sides, or the angle isn't between the two sides. So there's two cases for each. So let's take a look at the first one, when the angle is between the two sides. So let's say we have triangle ABC. And we have angle C, let's say it's 35 degrees. And we know the two sides that it's between. So we have our two sides and the angle is between them. Well, if we look at our laws, in this case, we would know sides B and A. So we would know sides B and A, so that will put us with this one. But we don't know angle A and we don't know angle B. So we wouldn't be able to solve this law of sines. But if we know sides B and A, well, B and A is in all of these. So we could fill in everything. We could fill in B and A here, or here, or here. It all depends on the angle we have. Well, the angle we have is C. So we will be using this last one because we know sides A and B and angle C. The only unknown is that side C. So we would use that. We would do C is the only side we don't know, so that's left alone. And then A squared plus B squared minus 2 times A times B times cosine of C. And you would evaluate that out, just solve that and take the square root, and that will give you the length of the side. And then look, you have all three sides, so you could use the law of cosines again. So it starts out, if you have two sides and the angle in between, it's law of cosines. So let's try a case when it's two sides and the angle isn't between. So we have our triangle ABC. And let's say our two sides are, we'll do the same, A and B, 10 and 11. And we'll make this 81 degrees. So we have two sides and the angle is in between. So the two sides that we have are sides A and B. So if we look, sides A and B. And the angle that we know is angle B. Oh, angle B. So we know three things in this first equation. So we will be able to solve for that fourth one. So if you know two sides and the angle is not between, you can use the law of sines. So we don't know angle A, but we know side A, we know angle B, and we know side B. So all you would do is multiply both sides by 10 and take the sine inverse to get angle A. And then once you have angle A, you know two angles. And if you know two angles, you know all three angles add up to 180. So anytime you know two angles in a triangle, you really know all three angles in a triangle. So you can use the law of sines whenever the angle isn't between the two sides. Now, what's interesting about this one is you could also use the law of cosines because we know sides A, B, and angle B. Well, the only one with angle B is this one. And we know B, we know A. The only thing we're missing is C. So there's really one unknown. You could do 11 squared equals 10 squared plus C squared minus 2 times 10 times C times cosine of 81, but this is a quadratic equation. And if the coefficient of the middle term is 20 cosine of 81, so this is 0 equals, I'm just going to simplify it, negative 20 cosine 81 times c, and then minus 21. This is the quadratic. I don't think it's going to be factorable if our middle coefficient is negative 20 cosine of 81. So if you don't feel like using the quadratic formula with trigonometric values, I would recommend using the law of sines. If you do want to use the quadratic formula, I mean, you can. It would give you the answer from this, but I would caution against that. It's not really the best method. So if you have the angle not between the two sides, I would use the law of sines. All right. And the last case, so we can't do when we have three angles. Three sides, it's law of cosines. Two sides and one angle. If the angle is between, it's a law of cosines. If the angle is not between, it's a law of sines. The last one is anytime there's two angles and one side. Oops, not side. So anytime there's two angles and one side. So let's try an example of this. So if we have triangle ABC, if we have two angles, let's say this is 47 degrees, and this is 63 degrees. Well, it doesn't matter what side you have is that you know, because if you know two angles in a triangle, you can find out the third angle in the triangle, because these always have to add up to 180. So if you know two angles, you really know three angles. Now, if we knew just three angles, we wouldn't be able to solve, but let's say we had a side. Let's say this was 15. All right. So if we know two angles, we really know three angles. 63 and 47 adds up to 110. So that means angle C is 70 degrees. So that means we know angles A and B. Oh, angles A and B. And we know side A. Side A. So we will be able to use this one. We know angles A and C, and side A and C, and side A. So we'd be able to use this one as well. So we'd be able to use the law of sines. Both versions of the law of sines, two versions of the law of sines rather, in order to get sides B and C. So sine of 47 over 15 equals sine of 63 over B, and sine of 47 over 15 equals sine of 70 over C. And you would cross multiply and divide in order to solve these proportions to find out what B and C are. So if you know two angles in one side, you can find the third angle and then use the law of sines. So that's it. If you have three pieces of information in a triangle, you can solve the whole triangle using the law of sines and the law of cosines. You use the law of cosines when you have all three sides, or two sides in the angle in between. You use the law of use the law of sines when you have two sides and the angle isn't between them, or any two angles in one side. All right, have fun.